Now, it's about sowing seeds this morning. And it struck me that the problem with seeds is they're often very tiny. I have got in this little box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seeds. You'll have to come and look afterwards if you want to see how tiny they are. There we go. Tiny. And looking at them like that, we haven't got a clue what they are, have we? No. We don't know how big they'll grow. And you know, when you think about it, the same is true of babies. Have you noticed when they're first born, they all look a lot alike, don't they? They're all sort of red-faced and make a lot of noise when they're hungry and things like that, and fill their nappies. So they all do the same kind of things. But look how they change as they grow. We have had 3 young men staying in our house this weekend who used to be my little grandsons. The eldest will be 20 next month. Hello, Julia. Good morning. And he and his next down brother, who is actually growing to be taller than him, they sort of fill the house on their own, you know, without their mum and dad and the little one, who is now 13 and a half and is definitely taller than me. Can you imagine it? 3 pairs of size whatever feet to fall over all the time. When you think back to these tiny babies that you picked up and just nursed and said, oh, aren't they sweet? You couldn't do that anymore. Children grow, seeds grow. And so no matter how small they start off, seeds are important. And we're going to listen to the reading from Matthew 13, which Barry is kindly going to read for us.
That same day, Jesus left the house and went to the lakeside, where he sat down to teach. The crowd that gathered round him was so large that he got into a boat and sat in that, while the crowd stood on the shore. He used parables to tell them many things. Once there was a man who went out to sow corn. As he scattered the seed in the field, some of it fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some of it fell on rocky ground, where there was little soil. The seed soon sprouted because the soil wasn't deep, but when the sun came up, it burnt the young seeds. And because the roots were not grown deep enough, the plants soon dried up. Some of the seed fell among their bushes, which grew up and choked the plants. But some seeds fell in good soil, and the plants produced corn. Some produced 100 grains, others 60s, and others 30. And Jesus concluded, listen, then, if you have ears, listen. Listen then and learn what the parable of the sower means. Those who hear the message about the kingdom but do not understand it are like the seeds that fell along the path. The evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in them. The seeds that fell on rocky ground stand for those who receive the message gladly as soon as they hear it. But it does not sink into them, and they don't last long. So when trouble or persecution comes because of the message, they give up at once. The seeds that fell among those thorn bushes stand are those who hear the message, but the worries about this life and the love for riches choke the message, and they don't bear fruit. And the seeds sown in the good soil stand for those who hear the message and understand it. They bear fruit, some as much as 100, others 60, and others 30.
I'm sure we'd all like to think we're the good seed sown in the good ground, yes? Doesn't always work out quite like that though, does it? And when you think about it, you can probably think of several people who might at one time have had faith, but who've lost it. It happens, doesn't it? Unfortunately. They're not strong enough. Something goes wrong in their lives, they blame God. They're not strong enough to keep that faith. And that's where we come in. We've got to help them to find their way back. Now, as I said, I'm a hopeless gardener. I can never find anything, even in the shed. And when I put labels in to remind me what they're called, they're like little headstones in my plants. They just don't grow, you know. So I'm not the best person to use garden as a metaphor, I can assure you. But every now and again, something really nice grows. Might be a weed, but if it looks pretty, then don't pull it out, because you've got to have something. The roses have done very well this year, haven't they? Even mine. So that's been good. And in the spring, we had the most glorious show of wisteria. It was like a waterfall coming down the fence. So some things work, but other things, well, not so well. I try and make a list of what I've planted where, and then when I go and look for it the next year, there's nothing left of it, you know? But I suppose there's always hope with both plants and people, because I planted a verbena in a pot at the front last summer, pretty pink flowers on it, to fill a gap where the grating was. I put it in the grate. And it was lovely in the summer, and then it sort of disappeared. I thought, oh no, another gravestone, you know. But I didn't bother to throw it away because I'm a lazy gardener. I just left it there because the pot didn't look too bad. And guess what? In the spring, we had some green bits coming up. I thought, oh, is it going to do it? And it's now in pride of place on the back patio by the fountain because it's got lovely pink flowers all over it again. And that's what we need to do with people. We don't have to assume that they're lost forever. No one is, because that's the message that Jesus brought us, isn't it? No one is lost forever. But quite a lot of things are lost. I mean, I put the history booklet together in, was it 89, to celebrate our 50th anniversary of this church. And there are all these wonderful photographs of young people. There seem to be hundreds of photographs with young people, all excited and happy and doing church things. Well, I don't think we look very young in here, do we? No. We might still be doing church things, but we're doing them more slowly and sometimes more reluctantly as we get older and older. It's all changed. Do you remember those Sunday school anniversary days? The big platform, yeah? Did you not have big platforms in your church? Yeah, some of you did, yeah. You got a new frock if you were very good, didn't you? That was a good incentive to sit on the platform and look really angelic, even though we weren't. But yeah. But I mean, there were literally hundreds of people in the church and on the platform. You've seen some of these big old-fashioned Methodist churches with balconies round and everything. But we filled them, didn't we? And we filled them with young people. We used to go to youth club on Friday night and a sort of prayer session on Sunday night. And we went because all our friends were there. It wasn't because we were particularly pious children, but we learned something as we went along. Some of us, it stuck. My sister and I had exactly the same upbringing. She went to the same Sunday school, but she was 3 years younger than me. And it just didn't, the seed didn't take at all. When she married a man who was still to this day is an atheist, and she just quite happily settled into that. When she died a few years back, she was only 63. We had to have a humanities service. We couldn't have a proper one. But the lady taking the humanitarian service was very nice, and she could see how upset I was about it. So I did manage to get my bit in. And John, my brother-in-law, was sitting over there glaring, and I thought, well, blow. I'll say my part. And she was a senior in the education department, and there were a lot of senior people from the education department there. And they said to me afterwards, it was a strange kind of service, wasn't it? So I said, yes, well, don't blame me. The coffin sits there, and it was a cremation, but it didn't disappear. It just stayed there, which was really weird. Yeah, so, but she grew up in the same place with the same knowledge given to her as I did. But she never flourished in God's garden. And it's such a shame, because she, after a while, we gave up on each other. We were just too far apart. We saw each other, but not too often. It's a shame. And my grandsons, the three hulking young men who are possibly leaving now, they've stopped going to church. They started off in a family church in Bromsgrove. My daughter-in-law supervised the Sunday school. My son was a senior steward. And all three boys were christened there. Of course, the third one caused great merriment on one occasion because it was a nativity. And he was supposed to be a shepherd. But he decided, okay, it was about dressing up. He'd be Spider-Man. So he came in his Spider-Man outfit and refused to take it off. So there were two shepherds and a Spider-Man. And he was also the one who used to crawl up onto the platform when he was quite little and play with the microphones. They were used to him, thank goodness. But there were loads of children in that church. And then when my family moved to Haywards Heath, all of a sudden, there were no children in that church. They didn't want to be the only children there. So that gave them a good excuse. And now, the middle one plays rugby on Sundays. So, and my son is too busy. He catches up on all his work on Sundays. He's just taken on a second school, so he's now got 600 people to worry about instead of 200. I don't think they're paying him any extra either. It's one of these things, the academy, which his academy is based in Chichester. And they've decided that this second school needs a head to overlook what's going on, other than the one that it used to have. But he doesn't want to leave his first school. It's all very complicated. But it means he's busy. He's too busy. And I constantly pray that the family will find their way back. Because they could be like my verbena. They could flower again, couldn't they? I mean, some of you might remember my late neighbour, Elsie. She came to every woman. You remember Elsie? Coming to every woman. She had lost her faith, but I used to go to the pictures with her and things like that. We used to go to U3A. So I said, why don't you come to this meeting with me? And it was the Monday night every woman. And she enjoyed it, the speakers and everything. And she started joining in the Lord's Prayer and all that kind of thing. And when she became seriously ill, her family decided I was her minister. I said, you know I'm not a fully ordained minister. Yes, but she wants you to come and pray with her. You're her minister. And she spent a lot of time dying. She was in the hospice and then they sent her home. She came home. And every day we had our prayer time. And in the end I did her funeral last November and when she died. And I think her faith, I'm confident her faith had been restored. And it had been restored through this church. So there you are, every woman. Thanks to you, Elsie found her way back home. And I think some of it rubbed off on the rest of her family. They stopped for a while and thought about it. Maybe those seeds will grow. It's not easy to work out which seeds will produce growth and which won't. Not easy at all. We can look at those tiny little black things and think, what are they going to do? We don't know. Don't write anybody off. That's the message, really. Because Years ago, when we were still living in central Manchester, a group of Christians in Manchester took food and clothing and medical supplies to Croatia. You remember, it wasn't Ukraine then that everyone was helping, it was Croatia. They went on several occasions and used the same interpreter every time. And on one trip, the interpreter turned around and said, "Why do you do this? Why do you care about us?" The driver of the lorry, who was the Manchester florist, was the one who explained that they were doing what Jesus had asked them to do. He wasn't a minister either. But the next trip, the interpreter went into the church with them, and she asked Jesus into her life. So you never know, do you? A florist can make a convert. We can. "Why are you being so nice to us?" said one of my pupils. I said, "I've got no choice, I'm a Christian." She went away to think about it. And she's one of the few who came back after she'd gone through university. She came back, and I said, "Oh, how are you doing?" "Well, I'm married. I'm married a Christian." I said, "Oh, brilliant." And I wanted to come back and say thank you for bullying me into carrying on with my A-levels, because I'd never have met him if you hadn't bullied me. So God works in many wonderful, mysterious ways, doesn't he? Never be afraid to sow seeds and to pray that they will find good ground. Amen.